It was one of those evenings when the air feels heavy for no reason. I was in the kitchen, finishing up a late cup of tea, when the door swung open harder than usual. My son stepped in, his face pale, eyes wild, breathing faster than normal. He didn't say a word at first, just stared at me like he was trying to decide if he should speak. I felt my stomach tighten, but I forced a smile. "Rough day?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He didn't answer. He walked past me, then turned back, fists clenched at his sides. There was something in his eyes I hadn't seen in years, a mix of rage and heartbreak. I put the cup down, my voice softer now. "What happened?" He shook his head slowly, as if searching for words. The silence between us stretched, and the only sound was the faint ticking of the wall clock. I could tell whatever it wasn't small. I stepped closer, hoping to break whatever wall he was putting up. His lips finally parted. "I saw them," he said, his voice trembling. Just 2 words, but they hit me harder than I expected. I frowned, confused. "Saw who?" He looked away, his jaw tightening, the muscle twitching like he was fighting to hold himself together. I reached out and touched his arm, but he pulled back. The pause that followed felt like it lasted forever. My mind started running through possibilities. Friends, strangers, maybe even a fight. But deep down, a colder thought began to form, one I didn't want to name. His voice cracked when he spoke again. "I saw them together, like that." It felt as if the ground shifted beneath me. My first instinct was to ask if he was sure, if maybe he had misunderstood. But I couldn't bring myself to say it. The look in his eyes told me he wasn't mistaken. I swallowed hard, forcing my voice to stay steady. "Who are you talking about?" He finally looked straight at me, and the way his expression hardened told me before his words did. He spoke the name I had hoped would never leave his mouth in this kind of context. The person I had trusted most in this world, the one I built my life with. My chest tightened, heat rushing to my face, but I tried to keep my voice calm. I wanted to believe there was another explanation, something innocent, but his voice carried no doubt. "I know what I saw," he said, almost in a whisper, as if speaking louder would make it hurt more. I took a step back, my mind a storm of questions and disbelief. A strange chill ran through me, even though the room was warm. He stood there, fists still clenched, his breath uneven, and I realized this wasn't just about what he saw, it was about what it meant for both of us. The words hung in the air, heavy enough to crush me. I stared at him, hoping for some sign that maybe this was just a misunderstanding. But his eyes didn't waver. He had seen something real, something I wasn't ready to face. I forced myself to ask the question I dreaded. "Where?" My voice was quieter than I expected, almost as if I was afraid of hearing the answer. He hesitated, then said it plainly. "Downtown. Outside that hotel by the river." My stomach churned. That place wasn't somewhere you went by accident. My hands trembled as I gripped the back of a chair, trying to keep my thoughts from scattering. I asked who the other person was, but he shook his head. Didn't recognize them. Didn't matter. I could see what they were doing. His tone was flat, almost hollow, but the anger underneath it was unmistakable. I tried to piece it together, to find a loophole that could undo what he'd seen. Maybe it was business. Maybe it was an old friend. Maybe the touch he described meant nothing. But every excuse I thought of collapsed under the weight of his certainty. His voice grew sharper. "You always told me to respect them, to believe in them. And I did. But you need to open your eyes. This isn't the first time." Those words stung more than I expected. Not the accusation, but the implication that he'd been watching for signs while I was blind to them. My mind reached back, dragging out moments I'd buried without realizing. Late-night calls that ended when I walked in, sudden changes in clothes, unexplained trips to the store that took too long. I had dismissed them all. I didn't want to be the kind of person who doubted someone they loved. I took a breath, steady but shallow. "Are you sure?" It was the last weak defense I had left. He gave me a look that felt like it stripped away every layer of denial I was clinging to. "I'm sure," he said. "And I think deep down, you've known something was wrong for a while." The truth in his words scared me more than the betrayal itself. My mind screamed for proof, something undeniable, something I couldn't excuse. I was about to tell him I needed time to think when my phone buzzed on the table. Unknown number. Just a single message. You deserve to know the truth. My fingers hesitated over the screen. For a moment, I thought about ignoring it, pretending it wasn't there. But my son saw the message, stepped closer, and said quietly, "Open it." His voice was steady, but I could feel the tension running through him like a wire pulled too tight. I tapped it open. Another message came in instantly, but this time there was a file attached. My chest felt heavy as I pressed the download icon, my pulse in my ears louder than the ticking clock. I set the phone down, staring at the table as if looking anywhere else would make it disappear. My son's voice was low, controlled, but laced with a deep hurt. "Now you see it." I nodded faintly, though the gesture felt empty. My pulse was racing, not from anger yet, but from the crushing realization that the life I thought I had was not the life I was living. I picked the phone back up and, with a steadiness I didn't feel, sent a short message. "We need to talk. Now." It didn't take long for the reply. Just one word: home. The front door opened minutes later, and they walked in like nothing had happened. I held the phone up before they could even greet me. "Explain this." My voice was level, but the coldness in it surprised even me. They glanced at the screen, then back at me, their expression unreadable. "It's not what it looks like," they said quickly. The phrase was a trigger. My son stepped forward, anger breaking through the thin layer of control he'd been holding. "Don't lie," he snapped. "I saw you." Their eyes flicked between us, calculating. "You're mistaken," they said to him. "You've always had issues with me. This is just another attempt to drive a wedge." That sentence lit something in me. "Don't turn this on him," I said, my voice sharper now. "He's not the one sneaking around." They tried again, weaving half-formed excuses about work, old friends, coincidence. But I saw it, the flicker of panic when my son repeated the hotel's name. The argument escalated, voices rising, accusations crossing the room like knives. My son's fists clenched tighter, his breathing fast. I could feel the tension building toward something dangerous. I stepped between them, my hand lightly pressing against his chest. "Calm down, son," I whispered. The words meant as much for me as for him. But inside, I wasn't calm at all. My partner's eyes hardened, as if realizing denial was pointless. "You'll regret taking his side," they said, their tone cold, almost threatening. Then they grabbed their bag and walked out, the sound of the door closing echoing through the house like a final verdict. My son stood still, jaw set, his gaze fixed on the empty doorway. I stayed there too, caught between the urge to collapse and the need to stay upright, knowing this was only the beginning of the unraveling. I shook my head. "No. I'm sorry you had to be the one to tell me." There was no anger toward him, only gratitude laced with grief. He had protected me from a truth I wasn't ready to face, but in doing so, he had carried some of the weight himself. That thought alone made my chest ache. We didn't speak for a while. I walked to the living room, sat down, and stared at the floor. The absence of their presence was almost louder than their voice had been. I thought about the years we'd spent together, the moments I believed were real, and wondered how many of them had been built on lies. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the foundation it shattered. Eventually, I stood up and went to our shared office, pulling open the desk drawers. I wasn't searching for anything specific, but part of me knew I'd find something. And I did. Receipts for dinners at places we'd never gone together. Emails printed out and hidden under a folder. One in particular caught my eye, short, casual, but unmistakably intimate. I stacked the evidence neatly on the desk, not out of spite, but for my own clarity. There was no point in arguing anymore. The truth was here, in my hands, undeniable. My phone buzzed on the table, their name flashing across the screen. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened a new message and typed, "I've seen enough. Don't come back." I pressed send, the small whoosh sound feeling far too quiet for the weight of what I'd just done. When I returned to the kitchen, my son was still there, watching me carefully. He didn't ask what I found. Maybe he already knew. I sat across from him, meeting his eyes. It's over, I said. He nodded once, no relief, just understanding. We stayed like that for a while, two people sitting in the aftermath, letting the dust settle around us. I could feel the pieces of my life shifting, breaking apart, and somewhere deep inside, starting to rearrange into something new. It wasn't strength yet, but it was the beginning of it. Later, as the night grew quiet again, I thought back to the moment I'd placed my hand on his chest. I had told him to calm down, to hold back his anger. But the truth was, I was the one who would never feel calm again. And maybe that was the point. Calm wasn't what I needed anymore. I needed the truth, no matter how much it hurt.